at least.
All right, here we go. This is another episode of White Noise. I'm Chris Stewart, and this is Jay Wamstead. He might prefer to be Dr. Wamstead for tonight. For tonight's issue, we're going to talk about teachers are big mad, and by that, I just mean I tweeted some things, as I do. This is what I do. I tweet, therefore I am. And at least one or two of the things in this thread of tweets that I had pissed off a bunch of teachers, and now I'm everything but the child of God. So, Jay Wamstead, help me understand what the hell is going on with your people.
Let's do it. My people,
Let's do it.
The teachers, and the most of us are white, so like that's why we're talking about this on White Noise.
That's right.
Did you do this? Was it Thanksgiving Day or was it the day before? I didn't look up the date.
I want to say it may have been Thanksgiving Day because I know I was like just chilling.
Yeah,
even
if it was the day before,
that's what I do when I chill.
Yeah,
it actually really didn't ruin it though. Like, I mean, listen, I've been getting. You and I have talked about this on the show before. I wasn't a great student. I've been getting this feedback from teachers since I was in first grade. So there you go. I'm used to it.
I had one of those good bag tweets also. I tweeted a screenshot of on Thanksgiving Day of the shot from the Peanuts show where Franklin's on the other side of the table and all the Peanuts gang is on one side and Franklin's on the other.
By himself, by his damn.
Yeah. So I tweeted that out with just a word to teachers, and for about a day it kind of blew up a little bit, and teachers are responding and talking, and then some angry white Trumpists got a hold of it, and so it was like 24 hours later, all of a sudden it just blew up into negative energy. People, you're the racist and everybody's the same. We all bleed red, those kind of things. It was a long day. So this is what I thought.
So you know what tonight. I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. If a tweet gets big, there's good and there's bad. Eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I thought we'd talk about tonight. What I'd like to do is I took your 10 tweets, and as many people pointed out, it was 11, but I knew that 2 of them were sub-pointed to the same. I took your 11
7
tweets.
is twice, right?
Yeah.
Like number 7 was 7.5 is kind of what it was. But okay, go ahead.
People on Twitter, if they can score points off of the lamest thing. So I hope you didn't read every comment that came through.
No, I mean, I was sitting there chilling. So as they would come in, I would respond. And at a certain point, it was kind of like an avalanche where you're just like, let me say this too. Okay. I know you have a plan here, but just to say this much, the teachers came in late. These people, the angry people that we're talking about, came in late. This thing went hella viral before that.
Oh, yeah?
So for like a day or two, it was all like retweets and happiness and flowers. So the angry people came late to the party. They came way after. It had been like several notable people had retweeted it. Former Governor Howard Dean.
I saw Howard
retweeted it. And others. And every time that happens, it gets more attention. So every time one of Howard Dean, for instance, when he retweets me, which he does, it goes further than it would normally go. Right.
Yeah.
So that's what happened here. That's what happened. And it was good stuff. He tweeted it out. Lots of wisdom in this thread by Citizen Stewart. I was pretty proud of that shit. So there you go.
No, I saw that, and he has 100 and 200,000 followers or something. So that's interesting though that the anger didn't come till the next day.
Oh, it didn't come until later. I was surprised by it.
So this is what I thought we'd do.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought we would. I broke your 10 tweets down into, I gave it a green, yellow, red system as far as I was concerned.
Oh, here we go.
In terms of like unobjectionable was green, yellow, I see why people object, but I didn't. And then red, I have some questions. So we'll come to the reds last, I thought.
Okay.
First off, I just want to say, do you remember what we talked about 2 weeks ago?
No.
Okay.
No, I should.
It's fine. We talked about charter schools. And how I think y'all have a branding problem, and that you need to figure out it. And I floated the term pro-public, like the same way the right took pro-life. I want charter school people to take pro-public, because on 8 Black Hands just 3 days ago, Mr. Ankrum was talking about charter schools and public schools, and you had to interrupt him and say the phrase "charter schools are public schools." So we talked about that 2 weeks ago, about how that phrase The fact that we have to keep interrupting people to say that means we have a branding problem. I just wanted to point that out. That's not the point of tonight, though.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, oh, sure, okay.
No.
Yeah.
I just wanted to point out that we were talking about that 2 weeks ago, and then y'all did it on 8 Black Hands.
Okay.
All right, so let's go with the tweets. Here we go. So I'm going to start with number 2, which is completely unobjectionable to me. And can I read it for everybody?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
It says, money matters in education, but money properly spent matters much more. The way districts spend money on staffing, programs, and buildings is rife with inequity and waste. And unless you're in the bureaucracy, you can't object to that. No teacher in America would object to that. Well, I don't want to say that, but I can't imagine a teacher.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a teacher objecting to that.
Yeah.
I looked up this. I had one quote in my head, and I was trying to Google it, and I ended up at a different quote by Oscar Wilde that I thought was funny. And he wrote that the bureaucracy is expanding to meet the needs of the expanding bureaucracy. And that is
exactly it. Yeah.
That is it. So that is what school systems do. Tweet number 2, no problems. Let's just move on. Let's move on to tweet. We're going to skip 3 and 4, obviously.
Okay, wait a second. Wait, what was 2? What was number 2?
2 was what we just said. Money matters in education, but money properly spent. Yeah. I'm going to the unobjectionable ones right now.
Oh, okay. We didn't do number 1 then.
We skipped number 1. I have a little.
We skipped it. Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So I'm sorry. So I have a little beef with 1. We'll come back to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Number 2, nobody should have beef with. I have a little beef with 3. 4 is its own thing. And you may not remember which one 4 is, but
no. 4 is the teacher one, right?
Yeah, 4 is
the teacher. We could come back to that. Yeah. Okay.
We'll do that one last. 5. No one-size-fits-all program will ever deliver a humane education to every American child. Parental choice of educational programs are not a threat to education, but a fulfillment of it. I can't see anything objectionable about that. Did you receive any feedback or kickback from that particular tweet?
I think that there are some people that see it as like the camel's nose in the tent on school choice.
Okay, camel's nose in the tent. Okay.
Yeah. Like it was more like, I get the way that you worded it, but I don't like it because I kind of know where it leads to. Okay. Yeah.
So I think obviously I can agree. I'm sure there are many teachers that object to this because they are like, it's just a give an inch and they're going to take everything. And we can't give a single thing about charter schools. So that's, we're not going to debate that right now because that's kind of their problem. And we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Number 6, also camel's nose in the tent, I'm assuming. Charter schools, like magnet schools, are neither the sole solution nor the sole problem in public education. They shouldn't be singled out for special critique while ignoring the inefficient traditional public schools for the same scrutiny. Can you think of anything specific you heard about that one?
I mean, it's anytime you say charter, no matter what context, it's predictable. So there are people that no matter what, in that tweet, I'm basically just saying I'm a third party. I'm looking at it like any of these schools could be good or bad, depending on your kid or whatever. But if someone hears charter, that's it. They're triggered. It's a trigger word for people. So no matter what I would have said in that tweet, it's a trigger word. It
was really illustrative to me. And you guys have talked about this a lot on 8 Black Hands, and you've talked about a lot just in your own writing and your own work, is that charter schools are nothing but a kind of an evolution of magnet schools. And I mean, I don't mean that they're necessarily even better, quote unquote. They're just like the next step in that process. Because magnet schools are so accepted, I work in a district where you're gone. I wonder if we're still streaming. Should I keep talking? Maybe he'll come back. I'll vamp. He came back.
Yeah, sorry about that. My internet's good. Sorry about that.
No. I was just saying that I work in a district where all the high schools are magnets, and they each have a different magnet. And I worked in a magnet school for 14 years, a magnet high school, and it was a very, very good magnet school. And we drew kids from all over the city, and they all came, we didn't even provide transportation. I mean, we provided like some remuneration on public transit, but anyway, they came from all over the city, and it was a real like good thing for everybody that went there, and then the community loved it, and the school loved it, and blah blah blah. But charter schools, even right down the street that were doing something similar, were vilified, right, by our same crew of people that were running the public schools. So it's been interesting to me to like consider that it never occurred to me. I was in a magnet school, and yet was being taught to vilify charter schools, right? And it's like the frog in the boiling pot. You just don't know you don't know what you're in until you get out, right?
Well, and I want to say this about that one point is this is why I don't think it's a branding problem. Like I don't, when someone has a prejudice, I actually don't feed into that prejudice by saying maybe if I just like didn't wear a long skirt, they wouldn't beat me, right? Like like it's not that charters have a branding problem. Charters are just a school with human beings that go in them every day, and they learn lessons, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, and whatever. Bottom line, that's all of it. But for some people, it's a MAGA type response to things, right? Yeah. You hear charter, you're in a union, you feel instantly that means that you're supposed to feel whatever it is, and then that's it. You're off to the races. And a thinking person can't sit around and saying like, well, I guess if I would have just said it differently, they wouldn't hate me as bad, as if that's going to change a MAGA person's mind. In this case, I'll call them mega because these are the ones I always talk about, the make education great again. They don't know that they're that essentialist and backward because they're so-called educated. They actually don't think that they're as backwards as a MAGA person, but a mega person and a MAGA person are they just don't know it. One doesn't know it. One doesn't care. The other one doesn't know it.
The MAGA's proud and the MAGA doesn't know. Yeah. So I'll tell you a story. I can't remember if it was 8 or 12. There was a ballot initiative in Georgia for about expanding charter school legality. I don't remember anything about it except that we received. It was a very confusing, as ballot initiatives are. It was a very confusing terminology. Like just reading through the initiative, you would not know what meant what, and you're gone again. So I wonder, I might just, I don't know if I'll keep talking or not. I'll just wait a second because I'm not sure if he's running the show. So must be really cold in Minnesota. That's why the internets are going in and out. Here in Georgia, we don't have to worry about that. It did snow here the other night, though. I mean, like tiny flurries, but it was a November snowy flurry fall. And people freaked out. And by people, I mean my children and every teacher that I am in texting or email contact with, because we cancel school here whenever anything, like there could be like a 1/4 inch of snow on the ground and we'll have to cancel school because we don't have salt trucks or any capability to deal with ice. I've just been telling a story about, we had a snow flurry the other night.
Stories with Jay. I'm glad you can fill in my friend. Sorry about that.
I was hypothesizing that it's so cold in Minnesota that you're losing your internet because of it. That's my only, I can only assume that's what's going on.
It's not cold right now. Well, it might be cold to you being in Georgia, but it's I think has a lot to do with the fact that I'm so far out from the cities. From you city slickers with all your fancy book learning. So what did I miss? Where did it drop off?
I was just telling, in 8 or 12, there was a ballot initiative about expanding legality for charter schools here in Atlanta, specifically, maybe in Georgia. And it was a very confusingly worded initiative, as they are, right? As they tend to be. And so we got an email from, we don't have a union here, but we got an email from some professional organization. I don't even remember who, but some professional organization, teacher organization that, instructed us all to vote no for this ballot initiative. And it didn't even explain why. It just said, just make sure you vote no. And I like went to the ballot initiative. I searched it out. I like realized, okay, this is what, we're voting. Actually, I think they wanted us to vote yes. I think it was one of those ones where they had worded it in such a way that like voting yes clamped down on charter schools and voting no, like it was counterintuitive. Anyway, my wife asked me, later, like she was like researching her ballot and asked me like, well, how am I supposed to vote on this? Like, what are they even asking? And I ended up fielding questions from like dozens of like normal humans wanting to know like, A, what the ballot initiative meant, and then B, what's the best thing to vote, because the air was just rife with teachers, professional educators, like saying, oh, we've got to vote this down, right? Like we've got to vote this down. And what was interesting is on the ground though, as a teacher, like we didn't know anything about it. We just like the ballot initiative like got voted in, and then it got sent to us, and then they like told us how to vote, and like it was interesting levers of power kind of thing. That's all. And I ended up voting for expanding charter schools, but it didn't fly, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, and the tweet that you're talking about with the charter one, that wasn't even really a pro-charter tweet to me. It was just kind of like a saying. It was just basically saying it is what it is. We have all these different kinds of schools. We got district, neighborhood, open, schools without walls, magnet schools, charter schools, private schools, half and half, hybrids, online learning. It's just like you could pick anyone you want and make it the bad guy if you wanted to, and all the information would be there for you to make it a bad guy if you wanted to.
And if people would spend half the energy just like making the closest school to their house better as they do trying to like shut some other school across the city down, like we'd be in much better shape, right? Because this negative energy that people want to spend trying to shut down something they don't like, or that conflicts with their business interests too. That's a whole nother thing. So
and for the record, I just want to say, I don't think the neighborhood school idea, as appealing as that is to middle-class white people, is a good idea. I actually think it's an idea that engenders hoarding. It's the safeguard of NIMBYism and hoarding without knowing it. You don't start there. You start with, we just all should have a really good walkable school from home. And then you start taking ownership of that particular school and feeling like you own it because you live there, your residents and whatnot. And that engenders a different type of, I don't like the idea of neighborhood libraries, neighborhood naval bases.
Neighborhood naval bases.
Naval bases. Yeah, we should each get like a Minuteman, in our own backyard.
Neighborhood army sergeants.
Our neighborhood army sergeant.
Well, we'll come back to this because this is this comes up in a later tweet. So I'm gonna skip 7. That's standardized testing. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm still moving through the non-objectionable ones.
Oh, okay. All right, good.
Number 8, to me, completely unobjectionable. School boards are not models of democracy. In fact, most of the bad things that have happened to people of color in schools has happened under elected school boards. And I just wrote all deliberate speed right underneath that. So
true story.
And you're the only one that I know. That's not true. I know other board people, but you're the only one in this conversation that's been on a board. So you are the expert here. But yeah, I mean, like the Southern school board was not a model of democracy until, there was no until. Anybody push back on that for you?
No, not really push back. Just maybe a snarky comment here or there, but nothing really like I think school boards are awesome, but I do think some people hold it dear. They hold up the idea that because you have a school board, you're more democratic. So if someone pokes at that a little bit, I can see where people would feel like, oh my God, you're hitting me where I love something. So let me get this right, though. So the majority that you went through just right now is the majority, right? So the majority of my 10 truths about public education were not objectionable.
I don't know. I mean, not to me. I mean, I don't think to most teachers I don't think to most teachers, let's put it that way. I think the stakeholders as you move up the chain to admin and downtown, quote unquote, and the bureaucrats and all that, I'm not going to speak for them.
Okay.
So our last unobjectionable one to me, and this just struck me as interesting, but you said, yes, there are no silver bullets in education. That doesn't mean there isn't usable knowledge about what works that isn't being employed in classrooms every day. And it reminded me, this is what everyone wants, right? They want to like find that panacea school, that panacea classroom, that panacea teaching style, and they want to write the book about it and push the book out. And I mean, some people just want to make money off of it, but I think there are like good-hearted people that think this pedagogy, this teaching style, this classroom, this school, this district, whatever, if we can just bottle it and sell it, then it will fix things. And
I think that's right.
And that's so far has proven untenable for hundreds of years. So, but your point, what it reminded me of is you and I had a conversation several months back about scale, right? And that was something that always kind of, it was a problem I had with some of the charter school models that I'm familiar with down here, in terms of they didn't seem to me like they would scale, and that bugged me. And you and I had a conversation about is scale the goal? Like scale's not the goal. That's the point. Is that if scale's the goal, like we're going to constantly be looking for the silver bullet or the panacea, instead of being like, oh, this works, and let's keep investing in what works and let it expand, slowly. And maybe it's not going to fill up all the air in the room, but it can fix its part, right? And if we can find another thing to fix this part and another thing to fix this part, and we can piecemeal it, patchwork it. Can
I tell you a little story about that one, about the scale thing?
Yeah.
So there's a school in Minneapolis called Pratt, and Pratt is very old. I want to say it's the oldest continuously operated school in Minneapolis, meaning it goes back a long time. And when I came onto the board, I started visiting different schools, and Pratt was one of the schools that I visited in my first round of schools I was visiting. And it was only like 140 kids, but it was in this funky little part of town. It's called Prospect Park. And it's where a lot of professors live and people from the university area. It's got a hill with a tower on it, and Pratt is nestled right in the middle of it. And it's got all these little things going for it. Didn't have super updated facilities because it was from the 40s, the 30s or the 40s, but it was quaint. It was funky and quaint. And little stories I could tell you about it. They had a woman who graduated from that school in the 40s who was teaching. It wasn't teaching, was volunteering every day. Would walk with the kids. The kids would walk to school together, and it was just so quaint. Quaint is the word that I can. But as it turns out, that was actually the school in the district where Black kids were doing the best, right? So when I pulled all because all the cute stuff got me. They had better food there. They were decent. It was it reminded me a lot of a little Berkeley, something you might find in Berkeley, California, And then one of my first board meetings, I can't say when it was, but on one of our board meetings, we got recommendations from the staff to close it. And I was like, wait a second, how the hell can you close this school? Number one, the Black kids in this school, it's integrated. Let me start there. Yeah. It was an integrated school. The parents fought tooth and nail for that school, for everything for it. They were putting extra stuff into it, elbow grease, whatever it needed. So it had community support. It was wildly successful. It had projects. There was these project housing right by it, and those kids were walking in a group together to go to this school. And they wanted to close it. And I couldn't get my mind around it.
Did they close it?
They did not close it, but it was I pissed everybody off because I was the vote. Not everybody, but I was a vote that changed. And what had happened was the board before mine had some long-term people on that board, apparently, and it was almost a done deal, but the administration could never get it through. So with me coming in, with the new board members coming in, there were 4 of us coming in. I guess there was this sense of, now's our time. Now we can sneak it through. And shamefully, I had already visited Pratt, and they didn't expect that, and I had already fell in love with it. Now, teachers didn't back me on that because it was too small. There's only 140 kids. That's not good for economy of scale. They can't offer all the bells and whistles. They didn't have all the other aids, and whatever supportive things that you can have in there. But meanwhile, we had a couple of really big schools, super big schools, that were half empty now because we had already closed all the small schools around them and forced them into this big building.
And it didn't work because...
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because parents liked the little schools. We used to have, Minneapolis used to have a system of these little, real small schools, not many kids at all. And it turns out, especially for a lot of parents of color, they actually liked the smaller, school. At the same time, Joe Nathan, who became one of my mentors, he's very well known here locally, had a big hand in the chartering experiment from years ago. He used to teach in free schools. He was like a free school teacher. He started our free school here. He sent me some stuff from the EPA that it was called Smart Growth. It showed their studies were that smaller schools actually work better for ecology, for cities, for village building, but also what I found interesting was that white kids did better in the mass schools, the really big schools, and kids of color did better in the really small schools. And I couldn't get my mind around it. But when they were looking at these suburbs that had 1,600 to 2,500 white kids in them, that actually was optimal for a lot of kids, for a lot of white kids.
It's because white kids are used to the homogenization of their entire identity. I mean, yeah, walking into a space where they blend into everything is fine, and there can even be that sweet spot of black kids or Indian kids or whatever, and they're fine with it, right? The white kids still feel safe and good, and that school can get bigger and bigger as long as those ratios stay the same, right? Speaking of small schools,
one of our local peeps here, Lucy, go ahead.
Speaking of small schools, there was a phase, gosh, there must have been some research done in the early 2000s. I think it was out of Colorado, and it was all about small schools. And so Atlanta, they raised a school that was just the facilities were terrible, and they on the same land they built 5 small schools, and they split it up into the School of Engineering and the School of this and the School of that, and so, 5 schools. And they literally hired 5 principals, and they let, except for a common football team and a common band, they let those schools run autonomously, even though they were all on the old property from the old school, if that makes sense. And it worked so well that Atlanta then decided that they were going to take their big high schools and jam small schools into the big high schools without changing the physical plants at all. So my first year of teaching was the first year we started this, and we literally just carved up the hallways on the building into different small schools and put different administrators in charge of each school and tried to replicate the small school inside a giant building. And it was a just disaster. I mean, my point was that, thinking about, was it Pratt? Was that the neighborhood or the school that they tried to close in Minnesota?
So it was a school.
Okay.
The neighborhood is called Prospect Park. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So thinking about Pratt, I mean, it's expensive to run a small school. It's why Mays, the school I used to teach at, tried to without rebuilding, just jam the small school feel into the big building, because there is a small school, there is something more expensive about it. And yet, if it's working, isn't it worth it, right? And
that was my discovery.
Right,
that was it.
Right.
Like I said to the staff at the time, there's a diseconomy to scale to big schools that don't work out, because all of a sudden now you have half the kids in a building that's made for 2,000. You have 800 or something like that. And now it's costing you thousands more per kid, when you should have just left the schools that you tried to feed into that big monster. You should have just left them open, right? You should have just left the smaller schools open. And it's expensive, but this is what really gets me about educators. Schools aren't a business. Corporatization, privatization. We're not business. We're not corporate, blah, 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 blah. Economy of scale is a straight up business way of thinking. And it's really weird to hear educators replicate that like it's widgets and whatever. Kinda, I guess maybe there's an economy of scale, but it doesn't seem to work out in urban areas. That's why you have so many big, ugly buildings that are decaying, because you pushed everybody into them, and then you can't afford them anymore because people want a more personalized relationship with their schooling, and they don't want to send their kid off into some big mass starter prison. My favorite words here. Anyways, so basically what we have learned tonight is that all my tweets were fine.
No. All right, so let's go back.
They were all good.
We're gonna get to the yellow ones now. So we're going back to number 1, which is my first. These are my small beef tweets. Meaning
small beef.
I see why they got a reaction, even if they don't bother me so much. Number 1 said this: our kids are capable of achieving far more than their teachers in schools think they are capable of achieving. The belief gap is real and dangerous. I believe 100% in that sentence. That to me is the point of white noise to me, is that like most of our teachers in America are white, overwhelmingly most, and increasingly every day, more and more, most of our kids are not white. And the information gap, the knowledge gap, the cultural gap, the understanding gap, the belief gap of a white teacher to a non-white child is not always good. In fact, often it's poor. And so that tweet doesn't bother me, but I see why it bothers John and Janie, white teacher, who like think, who either like don't think race has anything to do with it, or think they read White Fragility and they fixed it, or just can't even look past their own noses to think, I love all 23 kids in my room. How could he possibly say that I don't believe in them, right? So I see why I got a reaction, even though I totally support it. So
you don't
I'm
agree with it, but yeah, okay.
No, I agree with the tweet.
Okay.
No, the tweet.
Yeah. Okay.
I agree with the tweet. It was a off with a bang moment, because I can see why your typical teacher, especially a white teacher teaching children of color, I can see why they reacted, because they're not doing the work, or they think they finished the work. And so,
well, one teacher tweeted about that specific tweet. I didn't even get past one. I read that and I was done. And I thought, wow, okay, so you read that we have a belief gap and that our kids are capable of more. And as an educator, your response was to say, oh, I don't need to read any more here.
So
does that tell you about
to
it?
Me,
you know?
There's one of, I mean, and again, I already said it, but I think that's one of two types of, and again, I'm just saying white. I'm sure there are black people that.
There are black teachers too. Like you're living in Atlanta. Atlanta had a huge teacher scandal. And when you look at the transcripts of the things they said about the students, the way that they talked about students, I would never want my kids taught by anybody who said what those teachers were saying about those kids.
I think it's hard for anybody. I mean, it's hard to do something every day, whether it's your job or your parenting, or you're in a relationship with a partner, and to think, you of course think you're doing, most people think we're doing not only the best we can, but we think we're doing a good job in all of our interpersonal relationships, all of our professional work. So it's really hard to like interrogate beneath the surface and be like, no, why do I keep arguing with my partner about this? No, why do I keep blowing up at my kid just because he like dropped something? No, why do I constantly like
but don't you think
this
that
type of kid?
Don't you feel like teachers have a special type of, I don't know what to call it, because I honestly just really, I can't mask the fact that I think that teachers are narcissistic and that they only care about themselves, and that they spend so much time with children that they start to act like them, and that they want praise for everything that goes right and they want none of the blame for anything that goes wrong. And they associate, well, I mean, and they associate critique and blame and feedback, even the slightest bit of it, with something far more global and far more big. The reaction to some of these points by some teachers is so ridiculous. Like attorneys get crapped on all the time, and I know so many attorneys don't give a damn as long as they go to work and that paycheck keeps coming and they win cases and they're doing their job and they're moving up in their firms and all that type of stuff. You can tell all the ambulance chaser jokes you want about an attorney, and they don't give a damn as long as they're moving up the ranks in their little, law firms, coming out earning $100K, right out of the gate, and then, moving on up or whatnot.
No, sure,
but there is an anti-attorney bias in some ways around, like, they're shysters. They're all like trying to, scam you out your money and all that stuff,
And don't get me wrong. I'm a very comfortable, like, middle-class person, but like, attorneys get paid a lot of money to get shystered and
there's a 50% failure rate to get it to become an attorney also, right? Like the teachers need to get over this. So that'll get to another tweet here that I know you want to get to, but they're not comparable. Like they're just not. And anyone who looks at there's no way to make an argument that they're comparable in my way.
Wait, that what's comparable?
The training that it takes to become an attorney or to become other skilled professions and teachers, the bar of entrance, the level of the bar of entrance are not the same. Teachers have to stop comparing themselves to doctors who spend 12 years in a system, and the majority of them fail in a lot of cases, right? Don't become doctors.
Yeah. So we'll come back to that in tweet 4. That's the
That's the harsh tweet? Okay, all right.
That's the harsh tweet.
Yeah.
I do want to push back a little bit on like teachers are so I don't know, sensitive, and like you don't know. I don't know. I mean, like I get that like there was a lot of reaction to this, but I do see why there's a reaction to it. And I think
there's nothing more common to me though, Jay. I hate to say this. There's nothing more common. It's almost like you guys learned this in school in a program. Teachers defend teachers no matter what. It's like police officers. Like at the end of the day, like I get why they're like their feelings thing. And I think it's because it's such a white, female, infantile occupation. It deals with kids, white women, white feelings. I've heard in the last 3 days, Black men talk about the weaponizing of white tears in their schools when they're administrators and these things. But you say any of that type of stuff, and it feels like birth of a nation, right? It feels like, because it's very feminized as an occupation, that it feels like you're beating up on the wrong thing. Because, like, listen, the same gripes that people could have about teachers, they have about cops. But the reason I think that the cops is because they're men. You know, I think, I don't know, I could be wrong, but so go ahead.
You bled in a little into tweet 3, or at least what I want to talk about with tweet 3.
Which was that one? I forgot about that one.
Tweet 3 again. I have mine. I don't have beef with this, but I see why it provoked a reaction. Good teaching matters regardless of where students come from, of course. At present, students who struggle the most are assigned to teachers least capable of providing great teaching. That is a national scandal. And before you respond, I just want to say, I'm going to actually like more or less read what I wrote earlier. I would love to like see data about this, and if there is data. I know that's true, all right, from my experience working in a very, very struggling public school for 14 years. Everyone I've ever worked with knows that's true from their experience working all over the country. But is there data on that? I see why I guess my point is I see why that struck a chord, a nerve.
It's weird to me. That's so weird to me for one reason. If you've read Gloria Ladson-Billings, you have heard that. If you've read the research from Linda Darling-Hammond, you have read that. Mm-hmm. That is not my point. That I didn't make that point up. I didn't research.
No,
It's not mine. That point comes from the people that teachers read a lot of, like Linda Darling-Hammond.
Do they read it though? Like that's standard. You're naming standard like doctoral text. I mean, I read all that. I mean, I've read lots of Gloria Ladson-Billings. I haven't read Darling-Hammond since I left.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they're reading it as much as they're reading Kendi, but I think, you can throw rock in any direction and hit a teacher who's read like Dreamkeepers and felt like it was their own little personal, or Lisa Delpit's Other People's Children or something.
First off, I will say you just named 2 great books though. So don't throw shade at Dreamkeepers and Other People's Children. Those are good books.
I'm not throwing shade. Yeah, not throwing shade on them. I'm just saying this point is actually not provocative at all.
No,
it's kind of common. It's been made before.
It shouldn't be provocative, and yet, here's the deal. This is me just meta thinking, right? I bet there are a lot of teachers who teach tough children and teach children who struggle to function in a typical classroom, blah, 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 whatever, however you want to put it. Children who are multiple grade levels behind, whatever. And they read that tweet as a shot at them. Like you're sorry because you're teaching those kids. I don't know. I'm just trying to like put myself into a,
as Ray Ankrum would say, or Charles Cole, you're trying to throw them bail. And my thing is, I'm not their bail guy. I'm not their bail bondsman. Actually, everybody else on planet Earth is. Everybody else will give them so many outs to not understand something that they should already understand. We're still talking, like someone says here, Lucy says, isn't that the first lesson? Recognize your own biases. Things that are so elementary, teachers should have already encountered. I shouldn't be the first one saying it to them. So I have no bail for them. Like when they freak out because I tweeted something that not both, but Lisa Delpit would say it. Gloria Ladson-Billings would say it. Linda Darling Hammond would say it. Even Diane Ravitch has said it.
Well,
so when you put all those 4 people together who they have encountered,
and I've known,
come on.
I've had conversations with hundreds and hundreds of teachers in my time. Every single one of them knows this is true. What I'm positing is they might not know it's them, and that's
think it's somebody else. Yeah,
right.
Well, I get that, but why would they react, Jay? Like, why would they freak out?
I don't know. I got one more.
Okay, what's the one more?
Before we get to the big one.
This is yellow, right? We're still on yellow.
This is yellow. We're still on yellow.
Okay. All right, good.
So these are the standardized test quotes. And I'm gonna read them both. Standardized testing is no more biased or inefficient than the unstandardized tests constructed by a nation of teachers who harbor biases and low expectations for children of color. It was a great sentence. When you get fat, don't blame the scale. Standardized test scores have been used for decades in the service of civil rights cases against states and school districts. Imagine erasing that data. And so this one's interesting to me. Well, this one poked, I see why it got it. I agree with what you're saying. But I see that it poked there's a certain cohort, like standardized testing, provokes insane responses from people that are really into it, right? Either they are like Charles Murray and it is God's check that he's written to us and we can believe it for 100%, or they take the other camp where they're like standardized testing is the devil and can't give us anything and we've got to abolish it, right? And it doesn't seem to me that we have a middle. And so I see why this got a reaction, just because we've split on standardized testing so hard to those two camps. Would you agree that to me it feels almost like an ideological issue at this point, not even rational.
I feel like testing has been part of education going back at least 100 or more years. Sure. I feel like it went through different waves of iteration, meaning it improved or it advanced in some way, shape, or form. I believe in the 60s, it became a big deal because of integration and because of the war on poverty. And the war on poverty specifically started holding systems accountable for outcomes specifically with poor people and people of color. And there was a response and reaction to that lagged a little, but it eventually pissed off teachers' unions. And it isn't the No Child Left Behind. This is way back when. Actually, standardized testing is an old battle ground for teachers unions, white teachers specifically, who didn't want to be held accountable for what was going on in classrooms, where they really believed that kids weren't ready to learn and that the kids weren't able to learn. It's part of the union DNA for teachers. I don't know what part of the course, in getting your license that you learn it, but you learn to hate it at some point. And then I think that No Child Left Behind put it on steroids. Because then it was now not just a factor again, it was like a primary factor. Like, you're not going to just be a good teacher for all your years when no one in your classroom is ever learning as demonstrated by this test. I get all this stuff about it's biased in this way, shape, or form, which I think is a form of racism, to be very real with you. The standardized tests that are given to kids are less biased than the tests that white teachers give them, the ones that they construct for themselves. And part of it is because they have a lower bar. They have a lower expectation. Again, not me saying this. This is the part that really makes me laugh at teachers who freak out on these tweets. These aren't my tweets. This is actually just standard research. The low expectation of Black children, the Black children not getting into gifted even when they're qualified, the Black kids getting into special education when they probably shouldn't be there. These things aren't things that I'm making up. And to have a standardized third metric or instrument to help figure some of these things out, I don't know how other people feel, but I trust that better than leaving it up to 3 million flowers blooming in every classroom and everybody makes up their own kind of arbitrary way of grading kids and assessing them. And we have research that shows that you guys are grading towards is the norm of a white girl. That's really what the research says. If you get deep enough into it, you could actually, just by mimicking a white girl, you can actually do a lot better in school. Right? All your assessments and everything, when teachers are the assessors.
Yeah,
when teachers are the ones doing the assessments.
That's hard for me to speak to, is as a math teacher, and not that math doesn't have its own issues with cultural bias and like problems with testing, but like they're easier to address. I mean, like there was so much of math is like it can be acontextual, and then even the contextual stuff is it's just easier to massage than a reading assignment, than an essay. Like, I mean, those are hard things to that's harder work. You know, when my own children, when they were tested for gifted programs in the school they were in, you know, they just did everybody in kindergarten, but they don't, the assumption is not that the child can read, so the tests are all verbally given by the gifted specialist and the teacher or whatever in the school. I mean, and like it struck me, I mean, I've read about this, but it struck me anew when my own children like went through this process. It was like, you know, it's a white teacher, it's a white kid, and then the next kid that comes in is a black kid, and like just the chance right there for rife biases. And the teacher, yeah, technically they're trained to give this test, and it's I don't know what it is. You know, it's got some acronym of an IQ test that they give to 5-year-olds who can't read. But at the same time, like there's so much subjectivity there, and like the fact that the teacher has to read and respond and code and rubric and I don't know. That to me like explains all the gifted problems to me.
When I won't apologize for not trusting teachers. I need a third-party validator, like trust but verify. So one test once a year is not going to bother me. I don't like testing. I just want to be clear with you. Like, I didn't grow up liking testing. When I was a kid, it was the Iowa basic skills test we had to take every year. Hated it.
Yeah.
I totally hated it. Didn't love it. Did it like everybody else did. But it was a day out of the year. There were a lot of things I didn't love either. I didn't like going to the doctor, right? You know, there were like other things I didn't like either. But as a parent, I like getting that sheet once a year that shows me how kids in Minnesota are doing, how kids in my city and my district are doing, and how my kid is faring in that population. I like that third-party validator.
And as a teacher, I like it too. I like it as a father and as a teacher. I will confess to, you know, I came in to teaching in 2006 at the heart of the Atlanta cheating scandal. It was still going on and we didn't know it. And so I will tell you that I went through a couple of years of just like, I hate standardized testing. This is the devil. Like, this is ruining, like the pressure and the insane, crazy machinations that were going on, just trickling down into the buildings was crazy. And I could tell you story after story of like people either like halfway cheating for me or halfway encouraging me to cheat or allowing teachers to do things. I mean, like it was crazy. And we weren't even like one of the schools that was on the watch list. Like we were, but it was like how rain spreads down an umbrella. Like it just, every teacher in that district felt it. And I know that went on around the country. And to me, it just made me hate standardized testing. And once, I can't even remember her name now. It was Beverly something. All I can think of is Beverly Tatum. When she let, when that superintendent was found out and fired and they brought in someone else and things slowly changed, I grew to really love standardized testing. But here's why. And this is what I hear you on A Black Hands. You know, I have an advantage because I listen to you talk, and you don't. Oh, you're gone again. Oh, you're back.
And now back.
And he's back. I listen to you talk a lot more than you listen to me talk. So, and you did it about this one. You specifically were like blah blah blah, and I like looked up the school and I checked out the receipts of this teacher's school. You know, this someone that was tweeting at you. And this is what bugs me just a little bit about that, and I'm putting it under the standardized test tweet. Not that I'm bothered by your standardized test tweet, but I am bothered by you thinking maybe that you've got a complete snapshot of that teacher's classroom or that school by looking at reading proficiencies and math proficiencies, and I'm bothered by that because I have for years and years I kept assiduous data, and they're all on a flash drive that's at my office right now, or I would like actually read you real data. But I would have 10th graders. I would have 150 10th graders spread out over 6 classes, like about 28 kids per class, whose median grade level was like 7. All right. There would be literally, I had years where I had 3 or 4 children out of 150 that were on grade level, and then everybody else was below grade level, and their median was 7. Okay, that means that 50% of them were 7th grade or below, and I was teaching them 10th grade math. So I had these crowded classrooms trying to teach 10th grade math to a median grade level of 7. And here's the data that I got at the end of the year that I don't know that you get to see, because I don't know if it's public or internal, but I got to see the value added data, and the reports that Georgia ran where they took the kids and their starting points and they took their ending points and they mapped them. And yeah, this kid is still not on grade level, but I moved him 1.3 grades instead of 0.8 grades, right? And I moved this kid 1.6 grades, and I moved this kid 0.7. I'm not calling myself an unqualified success, but on the whole, my value added data always gave me great joy, even though my math proficiency scores would still look really bad to an outside observer. If you Googled me in 2014, which I think is the year I'm mentally citing right now, you would see, well, shit, he only had 7% of his kids on grade level. Yeah, but I came in with 2% of the kids on grade level, and I moved the kids 1.6 grades on average or something. But that data is not public. And
this is what I'm going to say is it is public in a lot of ways, right? So people beat up on things like Great Schools at the website. Great Schools tells you growth. It tells you absolute kind of proficiency. It tells you things like suspension data. It cuts it in so many different ways. It even has a thing on there about chronic absence, like how many kids are not, in school every day. It's a much fuller picture than just you didn't pass the proficiency score. The thing that I would say to teachers that get mad about that, though, is just this. Don't jump up on Twitter and Facebook acting like the expert, like you've cured cancer, if cancer still isn't cured. I'm not saying all your kids are going to be proficient. I'm not saying that they should all be proficient based upon some of the things that you said, some other factors that might be going on. I'm just saying don't get out there acting all like authoritative when, in truth, American public education, and specifically the very white, very female occupation of teaching, has not figured out how to educate children wherever they are yet. So until that happens, there just needs to be a little humility about, no, you're not going to get out on here and down talk me as a parent for 3 decades with multiple kids who's been through hundreds of teachers now, and act like I don't have a right to say something about what might be going down in the classroom. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm certainly saying you're not, though. Right? Like, I'm saying that we all should say we're students. Everyone, including teachers, should say that they're students of educating Black children. Like right now, America has not figured this out. America has a national scandal.
You still there?
Are you there still? I keep going out.
Yeah,
I swear this is COINTELPRO. I swear it's COINTELPRO. This is the government trying to stop a Black man, keep a Black man down. That's what all this is.
So I want to check.
All right, move on.
I want to check on something, because you said it several times. I know it's true. So I am fine constantly saying this very white teaching force, because I think we have a huge problem with our white people. I am, and I've got, a lot of thought and research and writing behind that. It's not a cavalier opinion. I am a little, I don't love that you pointed out the very white, very female teaching force. I'm not sure that the fact that our teaching force is largely female is a problem. Does that make sense?
You're not a Black boy. You're not a Black parent turning your Black boy over to a largely white female teaching force every day. White people send their kids to white people to learn every day. And
I'm fine with white, though.
You're fine with white women because you're not a Black boy in the United States with the history of the Black male, white female relationship in America has some issues when there's a power imbalance. when there's a power imbalance. And all of the things that I see in research, maybe someone else won't say it comes from that, but the idea that black boys are considered older than they actually are, the idea that research tells us that white teachers see black boys as less innocent than that they actually are, and that they punish them more harshly or whatnot. How can you get past that without looking at the power dynamics, the gender dynamics, the color dynamics, the racial dynamics, the class dynamics, all that? It's not, I can't get past saying it is what it is.
No, but my question is
like
this.
In terms of, the number, we're turning our kids over in a way that white people aren't. White people are not turning their kids over to black women every day for their primary education. And I would love them to try. I would love for white people to say, for the next 20 years, we're going to give our white boys to black women to teach exclusively for the next 20 years and see if we have any issues with it.
I will say that my own children
have some issues with it.
I guess I just, my question is, would it be better though if the teaching force was still 80% white, but 50-50 male and female? Like, I'm not sure anything you said would be any better. Like, so I guess my point is, I'm not sure it's actually a female problem, as it is a white class.
You are not a black male walking into a white school to talk to white women about your black child who's a male until you've had the experience as a black father sitting with a white woman in a classroom and talking over your scores and everything, and feeling out of place in some way specific,
As they say on Twitter, like, serious question, like, it is different talking to a white woman, talking to a white man for you.
And a black man and a brown man or whatnot. And your experience is different. Yes. And no, I'm not saying, I don't want to even want to use the word different. I just want to say that if you're not a student of history and how the power dynamics of all these things have played out and worked, you probably shouldn't be teaching black children, right? Because there are special relationships. There are these different special relationships. So when you look at, give me a scenario, tell me who the actors are. What's their history? Where do they come from? How have they been socialized? Have they been socialized and gendered as white, female? That has its own set of things in the United States, right? Yeah. And when it comes to now, let's add to that equation a black male, black boy to that situation. I know we can say, no, Chris, you're making too much of it. The teachers love the kids. They love the students. They give them hugs. They do this, they do that. Research, not Chris Stewart, is telling you this. Research tells you that they see black boys as older, less intelligent, more mischievous, and less like they get less grace. They punish. Are you there? Is the government still cutting me off?
It's like every time you get a little mad, they just start to fuzz you out.
It's Trump. Michelle Johnson said, it's black girls too. And she said, my son scares his teachers. It makes me cry. The stories I hear are mostly stories from parents. So
repeat that. Repeat that, the comment, the black girls.
Black girls get it too, which is absolutely true. They're seen as older than they actually are. They're adultified. Yeah, I read that. And that's my point, Jay, is like, you've read this before, and so have a lot of your colleagues and other people. So when they get kind of flipped out by things in tweets and they want to just, kind of psychoanalyze them too deeply and whatnot, I just want to say, you've read the same stuff I've read. Our kids are adultified. That they're more harshly punished. That when they have a black teacher, they do better. And you have to ask yourself, like, everybody, like, I saw people passing that research around for a while, like the articles, who would be totally against it if I were to say something like that, but they're passing that around. And I'm thinking, the one question that people should ask themselves is, Yeah, it's one thing to say that black kids do better when they have a black teacher. It's another to ask the question, why?
Well,
Why? Someone answer it.
It's another to, we've said this several times about other things, is that like every white teacher thinks, yeah, but I'm the exception, right? And so, like, I'm the white teacher. I'm the cool white teacher. I'm the good white teacher. Whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, I've based I'll stake my professional reputation upon the fact that it took me years and years to not be a crummy teacher to black kids. I mean, and I taught only black kids, right? So I mean, like, there was several like bad years where if I could redo that, I would. That's
all right.
Well,
let's get to the red ones since we have such, since we're coming to the end here. The red ones were, how many were red?
Just two, and really only one of them was number 4. No teachers do not know best. Here we go. Currently, ed schools draw teachers from the lower end of the collegiate pool and then fail to prepare them with evidence-based teaching knowledge. That is untenable.
That's the one that set everybody off the most.
So I read all the responses to that. I sorted them into like 3 categories. One of them, and we've already kind of talked about this, was basically people just flew to the ad hominem, like, well, have you ever taught in a classroom? I don't care what you think, which we can dismiss that because that's ridiculous. I mean, like, I do think there is something to, like, there is always something to someone that's, experience matters, like our perception of each other matters, all that, blah, blah, blah. But like dismissing the conversation because you've never been a teacher, like, that's garbage. The 2 types of comments that I found interesting, though, one, lots and lots of people told you their personal story. And I will tell you mine, that I have a very high SAT score. I have a math degree from a good state school. I got, I'm going to go ahead and brag, I got an 800 on my math GRE when I wanted to go back to school. That's the best you can get, Chris, so that I could get a PhD. And so I'm not from the bottom third of anything. But I only say that, I'm saying that tongue in cheek because lots and lots of people spat that at you, right? And I could list friend after friend that I have that's teaching that this grade, this score, they went to this school. Like,
I mean, okay, but see, your degree and background is in math, right? Correct?
My undergrad is, yeah.
Yeah, so you have a background in math, right? So you appreciate math, right?
Very much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So all the research based in math says that your anecdotal story that you just told is actually not the statistical norm.
Oh no, but I think you're wrong. I think you're wrong.
I'm not right or wrong because all I'm doing is reading the research that's been going since '95 on who applies, where they get into, how many fly-by-night colleges actually that didn't exist 10 years ago exist now and are giving out teacher certificates left and right. What's the percentage? You tell me, what's the percentage of teachers that actually get their education from non-selective colleges?
But Chris, the better question is, what's the percentage of teachers that didn't do education at all, like me, until later they got certified?
That's a good question. That's a good question. You know why that's a good question? I'll tell you why that's a great question, because that's the part of the teaching pool that is actually raising, in the last 10 years, has started raising people in STEM careers and mid-career changers are raising the bar on who applies and who gets in, and it still hasn't closed the gap with other professions.
Okay, so I'm going to push back.
Go ahead.
And then,
go ahead.
I did a lot of looking for data. I couldn't find any recent data to verify your tweet. In fact, I found data that contravened it. The most recent data I could find, like, was that basically said that in 2000.
Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, there's some studies from like 2000, 2004 that like show what you're saying, but that by 2014 that had turned around, and there's data out there about it.
I would love to see any data that says that it turned around because the studies that I look at are 2000, 2006, 2013, 14, and I would love any data that says it's all been closed since then. Because first of all, that would be a miracle. That would be like a statistical miracle if that actually really did happen in 5 years, like 4 or 5 years. That would be really great. I'd love it myself, to be very honest with you. So let's
table that, and I'll send you what I found. You send me what you found.
Yeah.
And I will say that the third type of response I saw was basically the you get what you pay for response, meaning that coming out of school to be a teacher is not a particularly remunerative job, and you're going to get what you pay for, and it is what it is. And so either you're going to get like really qualified people that want to live a lower middle class existence, or you're going to get people that are from the lower third of college graduates, if that's true, right?
Yeah.
And that is
mine didn't
America.
go into reasons though. Like mine didn't actually go into like why it's the way that it is. That tweet is basically to say that the system is broken.
Yes.
And honestly, this is not me saying this, and people don't want to hear it, so they won't hear the research in it. I don't care, because they're all educated, college educated people. They should know what I'm saying already. Like what I'm saying is not, I didn't make it up. The experts in your own field have basically looked at the American system of recruiting, training, and placing teachers, as opposed to the way that it's done in Singapore and Finland and other parts of the world, and have associated ours with low quality, like as from drawing from the bottom part of the collegiate pool. And when you look at the SAT scores and the things like that, education majors don't. We look like Finland looks before Finland shut down its teacher colleges and then restarted only the ones that were high quality and state run. We look like pre-Finland.
I want to confound a little bit because all the data I could find that showed that teachers were from, the bottom third or whatever, was all based on SAT data. I couldn't find anything about GPAs or I don't even know what other metrics there are in college to talk about besides GPA, and I guess there would be like years to complete or whatever, but it was all SAT data. And if there's one thing I know about SAT data, is that it is lockstep with family income. And my question to you is it possible that all you've done is tweeted the fact that we are drawing our teachers from the lower third of income in America? Because that's what SAT means almost as more than anything. That's the strongest correlation of SAT is income.
I mean, I find that to be an essentialist position that works against us in another way, which is basically to say all test scores only show you how poor and uneducated your parents are, so why bother with them? So all your black kids are actually failing on the test. All the tests actually tell you is how poor and uneducated your parents are, so you should be failing those tests. So let's not even look at it anymore.
No, but my question to you is based on that, right? Yeah. So I'm not saying to throw the test out, because just back to our standardized test conversation, like they don't measure everything, but they measure something, right?
They measure something. Yes,
we've got to do something with them. My question to you is this, and this is a huge thing for you, is that you're always telling parents that it doesn't matter where you've come from, it doesn't matter what you're working with. There's the information is out there, the opportunity is out there for you to take control of your child's education and do the work and bring your child what they need, right?
Yeah.
Why throw shots at teachers calling them stupid, which is essentially what this tweet did?
Number one, that's not calling them stupid. Number one, that is basically saying what the research and the numbers say. There is a material consequence. Finland has learned this. Singapore has learned this. Hong Kong has learned this. Japan has learned this. There is a material consequence for there to be fields like engineering and hard sciences and medicine to be drawing from the top of the cognitive pool. But to have the people that you place into the school systems to not be coming out of selective colleges. You have lots of selective colleges that have stopped training teachers altogether because they think that the field, number one, they think it's a cash cow. And number two, they think it's such a discredited field now because of all the fly-by-night colleges. Jay, you can sit in your pajamas at 1 o'clock in the morning tonight and actually find a college that will get you a teacher's license in a short amount of time without actually having had to do anything real, like in terms of being, this is not Finland. This is my thing. Educators have been ramming Finland down our throat for years. But they ignore the part that Finland actually shut down its teaching schools, its ed colleges, and then raised the bar of who could apply. So now becoming a teacher in Finland, at least from what the data says and what teachers say, is a more respected profession. It is something like, I even think about the people of color who are in college right now, and you go to them and they're the bright ones. They're the ones that did score high on things. They're the ones with the good grades and doing very well in life. And they get somebody that brings them 3 proposals, you know, the engineering school, or you could be a teacher, right? And make $35K and not be in a very prestigious field and whatnot. And guess what's going to happen? Those other fields are going to take those candidates like constantly. They're not going to actually, you know, I get that the SAT isn't the end all be all, but man, if I send my black kid to a school where nobody had good SATs and they had to take praxis 4 or 5 times, and you're in the suburbs somewhere and all your teachers that you're sending yours to were all the high performing teachers in all many different kinds of ways. Hey, I'm entertaining an argument that it may not be important, but I think in the big picture, if we're doing that to kids all across the country, I feel like it has some effect. I don't think you have to be stupid. That's the other thing. I don't think you have to be stupid to not be top scoring in the SAT. I don't think those two things translate with each other.
I know they don't, because again, SAT is a predictor of family income more than it is a predictor of innate intelligence. Like, whatever innate intelligence means.
Okay.
I missed it. Say it again.
I believe that there are people of color that are doing very well on SATs. You know, so I don't believe that it's just essentialist, that just you take the SAT and if your parents are white and college educated, that you do well on it. And if you're a kid of color, you don't do well on it. You know, I don't think it's that essentialist. I think a lot of people of color are going into some higher professions when they're talented, and they should be. You know, they should be rewarded for what, you know, for high scoring. I just want to say about this one, I get it. I had to think about it more afterwards and just be like, I don't get, number one, why people get so worked up. No, I don't know why people
I get it as a white person.
You know, like, why
as a white person,
you know,
as a white person, I get it, and I know why they're mad. For number one, because they come at me all the time with their trigger, but like that's fine. Like, that's their problem. This one, I'm a little more like, I don't know, this is the problem. I don't know this helps you. That's my point, is I
don't want it to help me. It's not meant to help me. This is the whole thing. This is not meant to help me. I think it has a material impact on the education that kids are getting, especially poor kids, marginalized kids. And I do believe, I can pull it up right now and it would take me seconds to pull it up. We found a school in Minneapolis that was in the newspaper for being a school that had the highest number of poorly performing teachers in the entire district. And it was just weird how they all seemed to arrange in the school where the kids were the poorest and where the accountability was the slightest. And I happen to consider it to be a district where some of the higher performing teachers or whatnot seem to all just congregate together. And some of the teachers that our other kids get are ones that the district knows were a problem, right? And again, I think if Linda Darling Hammond was sitting here, or someone else who studies this stuff, would have to say to you, there are a lot of non-selective garbage teacher prep programs that people are going through right now that are basically just cash cows for their colleges. And that the selective colleges, a lot of them have gotten out of the business of even preparing teachers. Now, I can get when someone says, I went to Yale. Shit, I have a great education. I'm not one of those teachers or whatnot. But that's like the cop who says, like, I've never beat anybody. I've never fired my gun in 20 years. I don't know what you guys are talking about. You have to know that some of your colleagues are not like, if you are one of the ones who says that I'm like one of the good ones, I'm very smart or whatnot, you have to know though that that's not like, well, maybe I'll take it back. Maybe you don't know that. I think you said earlier, a lot of your colleagues are like you, you know.
No, what I was going to say is that I've known lots and lots of people that went to great schools and have great pedigree of testing and success at school. And some of them were good teachers and some of them were terrible teachers. Some of them couldn't instruct their way out of a paper bag when it came to math because they couldn't be bothered to turn around in a high school classroom. They just kept facing the board and drawing equations. Like, that's not how you teach a high school math class. It's not even how you should teach a college math class, but you could probably get away with it.
Does anybody who's mad about that tweet, does anybody who like hates what that tweet says? Because first of all, that tweet said something else. It didn't just say that too, by the way. It's funny that people just gleamed onto that one part. But is anybody going to say the way that teachers end up teaching, whether you're smart, dumb, whatever, otherwise, is actually good. Like that we're actually preparing teachers for what they will face in their first year, second year, third year, fourth year.
So to me, you change to me the tweet. The thing is it's a tragedy the way we prepare teachers, and all these other countries you've mentioned, they have like some version of like real apprenticeship. They don't just like put you as a student teacher for 3 months and then give you a job at 22 years old and let you just teach a classroom full of children that are like expecting you to like move them forward. They don't do that in other countries. And again, it comes back to what we talked about with the physical plant of the building and small schools. Like it costs money to do this stuff, and it costs money to give a teacher a year of apprenticeship, and we can't afford it. I mean, we could afford it, but we've chosen not to, right?
I mean, Lucy in our comments had said earlier, like, isn't it expensive to not do some of these things, right?
And,
like,
and I was going to say, like, just from, I mean, every, you know the data about, for every kid that doesn't graduate from high school, that's an economic drain on America, and everybody knows it. But it's one of those things. It's like climate change; you can kick it down the road. It doesn't matter today, so I don't have to think about it. I was going to say,
no one got in my tweet in that tweet and said, Chris, I shouldn't even say no one. First of all, I just want to keep going back to all these tweets actually just were considered common sense to hundreds of people before the teachers came in.
Sure.
Right. And then the teachers got mad. But my real kind of takeaway from it was how many teachers came in and didn't say, I would challenge you on this, or, I mean, let's talk about this or whatever. It was instant. You're a moron. You're stupid. I'm great. I'm fantastic. I'm a dope ass teacher. Have you ever heard a terrible teacher say that they're a terrible teacher? Has there ever been a terrible teacher? You know who tells me that there's the existence of a thing called terrible teachers? Teachers, right? I had said this with Charles yesterday as we were talking about this. 90% of what comes out of my mouth comes from other educators, right? I'm not like just saying like, I'm making this up one day sitting on the tweets. Yes, I read the research. Yes, educators are often in whispers telling you who should be teaching and who should not be teaching. They're all walking around with horror stories, like not all, but enough to where it should never be a problem to just call these things out publicly.
This is just what bothered me, is that I don't think the SAT score of a teacher matters so much as the sham that we do in preparing the teacher for the classroom at 22 years old. And that's what and not only do I like, given that like there's 3 million public school teachers in America, like what are you going to get everybody with a 2200 on the SAT? Like it's just life. Like there's gonna be some people that did bad on the SAT. Lots of people do bad on the SAT. And
teachers are the only ones I know who get this much bail in their profession, and it's why they should not be considered or comparable to other professions. They just shouldn't be, because no one is sitting around saying, I just don't think that attorneys should have to pass the bar. But I just don't think that doctors should have to go through 12 years of doctoring and pass all these gates and blah, 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 whatnot. No, you should think that if you want a profession. We can't keep saying, so you had a low SAT score, that doesn't matter. So you went to a non-selective college, that doesn't matter. So that college is actually known for lower expectations than the bigger colleges are. So what? That doesn't matter. So it took you 4 times to pass the praxis. That doesn't matter. So you don't actually have a firm knowledge of the subject area that you're teaching in, but you do have enough of it for the grade that you're going to be teaching of it. That's just fine. And by the way, let's just put you in the black classrooms and make sure that, that we're kind of color coding who those lowered expectations are for. I'm saying that that's what I believe the research is telling me is happening right now. Like the pipeline, the low SAT to black classroom pipeline, to me is actually pretty slick. I don't think that white parents, I've seen white parents in some of the better schools get teachers kicked out of those schools, regardless of union rules. Get teachers, just all of a sudden you're reassigned, you're in another part of town. And that other part of town always happens to be us. So if we want to raise the bar for our kids, I think, and I want to stay specific to this because this is what I wanted to say in the tweets. I am not talking about everybody else's kids, because people are free to put their kids in classrooms with teachers and give them all these kind of mea culpas that they think are going to make the teacher feel good or make sure that the teachers. we have a problem with our kids, and we need the best we can possibly get. And this country owes it to us. This country owes us like what Finland has given its people then. And it's the educators who actually rammed Finland down our throat for so long. This is the part that I don't understand about it. Like, where's the pushback on that? Like, but Finland is the model.
That right there is that's the tweet, right? Is that like school by and large works for middle class kids, upper middle class kids, by and large works for white people, by and large works for the people who in power, and there's not a reason to fix it. Like,
that's it. I mean, don't even talk about our precious little system and our precious little public workers, and these are our moms and our sisters, and we're all connected and we're all bougie together, and we're all college educated, no matter how much you got through the skin of your teeth. Can we not actually just see that Karl Marx would even have a problem with this? This is a class problem, a race problem, and a gender problem. Like, this is a gendered, racialized problem, and it is a class-based problem. Poor people are sending their kids to a different class, a different race, and a different gender of people to educate their kids, and all three of those markers have historic problems. Like, historic problems. Part of the reason you are poor now came of those three components, in my mind. So for someone to say to me, well, Chris, you've never taught, so shut up.
I don't.
Yeah, well, you know, yeah, I got multiple kids.
That's not a helpful. That's not a helpful argument. I will say again, there are, again, you keep saying gender. I don't know. Like, there's all kinds of black girls that are at the school that at least the gender matches up, right? I mean, like.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, the real problem is race. Like I just think if you snapped your fingers and replaced 50% of white women teachers with white men teachers, all the same problems would be there. It would just be white men instead of white women. Like it's not the gender of the teacher. I'm just I'm harping on that a little.
I get it, and I'm gonna keep going back to. Good for you. You don't have a black boy that you're having, and you're not a black father carrying a black boy into schools with a white woman. So I'm telling you something from lived experience.
But what about the black? But what about the black girls though, Chris? That's what I'm saying. Like and the black mothers. Like, it's
a good question. We could say what about a lot of things, but this is my point is I'm telling you from lived experience something very specific, which I could fill this room with black men who could tell you a similar story, right? So, and we were the student at one point too, by the way. Like, so we were the student, and now we're the father, and we're some of us don't even want to go in the damn buildings. Some of us don't even want to go to the building and deal with that bullshit. It's a very feminized, kind of precious scenario, and we're gonna be wrong in so many ways just by going, right? And we know that ahead of time. So when our kid comes home and tells us something that sounds like a slight or a microaggression or an adultification of sorts or whatnot, we're not going to have to even argue about it. It's going to make a little bit of sense. I'm not speaking for everybody else. Like, listen, if someone else doesn't think that the fact that an entire race of people are turning the mistress of the house, the imperial white mother, as Dr. Curry would put it, and the white man together are a team in some ways. The cop and the teacher and others in other parts of the system, the judge, all of them, none of them are going to be able to throw their hands up and say, I'm not a part of the historic oppression of this situation. Like, I just don't think that that's going to happen. So I get it. And I appreciate it actually in this way, because I feel like you're doing what more of our people should do for us. You're sticking up for your sisters, right? That's what you're doing. And more people on our side, more black women in these schools should stop whispering to us how much of a problem it is and start standing up for us when we say this, instead of joining in timelines with their colleagues and sounding just like their colleagues because they didn't had that like little mind waxing going on. They should stand up for us the way that you're standing up for your sisters.
I mean, I don't know if this is your sister's business. I've talked with probably like 5 white women total. I've talked with dozens and dozens of black women. And my children have been kind of blessed in that they've had all women because they're in elementary school still, but they've had almost back and forth, like every other year there's been a black teacher, a white teacher. It's been pretty great.
which is more than many people in the country have had.
Oh,
right?
I know. No. When I hear these stories about, my first
No.
black teacher was in my doctoral program, if I'm not mistaken. My first black content teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I had a black health teacher in high school. He was a coach. But the first time I ever had a black man teach me, black man. My first black male content teacher was in my PhD program. This is not the point, though. Is that something you said did strike me, and maybe we can just leave on that. Is that if you snapped your fingers and replaced, I'm not sure I would put half men, half women in a building, only because I think the patriarchy and the misogyny of men takes up too much air in a room. But if you could change the teaching force from 80% women to 60% women, that I could see that being better, even if it was still white people. So I'm spitballing. I'm going to say something stupid. I'm not trying to.
Tisha Brady here. She said, I find white male teachers to be more understanding than white female teachers, which was my experience.
Yeah.
Actually, it's because a lot of the white male teachers that I'm going to say that I had in my life actually were related to sports in some way, shape, or form. So that's a different scenario, right? But there's a different level of them. There's just when they tell you to do something, it feels a little different, and it's going to be a little bit different, I think, than other cases. I get it, because Jen Bennis, who probably would have wanted to be in on this discussion because she wanted to challenge the tweets. I'm sure she wanted to challenge it from a white feminist perspective of how the profession is dogged upon mostly because it's been a female, not a racial thing, but it's been kind of a gender thing. And I feel like white feminists have been very clever for years of ways of including themselves into victim groups when actually they've been part of the master class. 2 or 3 weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, when Bill, whatever his name is, did the SNL skit in the beginning, his monologue, you probably haven't seen, where he's like, for years and years and years, white women, you were right there with me, the white man, rolling around in the blood money and sucking up all the privilege like anybody else. So sit down by my side and take your talking to like anybody else, right? I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was ballsy to say that.
Yeah, that was big. He went big on that one.
He went in, but a million people stood up and said, yes, finally somebody gets that. No, you're not always the victim. I get that you were a victim of things, but you were also part of the master class. Like you lived in first place. Anyways, I don't know that we solved anything except to say it's good to hear what the feedback actually is, but you're usually nice about these things and can offer more kind of I think gentle opinion about it. I think it's ridiculous that in 2020, I can't tweet 10 things that seem fairly kind of not that provocative, but maybe they are for some folks, without parents saying, yes, I get it, and and furthering it on. But then when it gets into the hands of educators, for them to be so just kind of, I don't know what, dogmatic, careless, insincere, unable to just carry it on as a conversation, just attack instantly, doing things that they would give us bad grades for, really bad reading comprehension, right? What do you think the real intended meaning was? Is it the way that you're taking it, or is there something more? What is the evidence supporting that or against it? Maybe you should ask, maybe you should inquire. These are all things that an educator, somebody into education would think to do. But I don't know. Maybe we got a whole bunch of polemicists in the classroom. Michelle Johnson, what did she say? It dogged because kids can't read and math. All right, Michelle, you're going to have to help me out with that one later. I don't know what Tia Z said. Many white suburban teachers are unqualified to teach our kids. They're afraid of the parents, believe that they are above the community, and some are afraid of these are the type of things I just don't understand. My feed could fill up with those on any given night, and I just don't understand where the homeschool connection is broken. Where, as an educator, I wouldn't be so sensitive about you're calling me out or you're blah blah blah. No. I am a public worker. I serve the public, right? I do social workers do social work. I do teaching. So let me, as an educator, help educate and help be educated, and let's have a relationship. It just doesn't feel like people feel like they need to do that or they have to. I don't know. What's your final word on all this, man?
My final word is that I'm fine with you coming after PhDs. I think you should come after teachers a little less. That's my final word.
What's funny is I didn't even know you had a PhD, and there's some people who have PhDs who are so wanting you to know it. Like every time that you talk to them, and here you didn't just have a PhD, you had a white person's PhD. So like you weren't Dr. J though. Like I don't know. Well, Dr. J, you should never claim Dr. J. That's a different.
I wish you should call me that. Yeah.
But you never came out as Dr. Wamstead. I don't know how I found out, but it was weird that it wasn't like one of your main things. But you feel like it's fine to go after PhDs, who, by the way, are part of the broken pipeline in teacher colleges, and educators and researchers are saying that themselves. But it's the
ultimate. People always ask, why am I not out of the classroom? And I'm not saying I don't anticipate being out of the classroom, but like the problem is that the pipeline encourages people to teach for 5 years, get a PhD, and then go teach teachers for the next 40 years until they've no recollection of what a classroom is like, right? And that's a broken system. I mean, like that's part of why the system is broken, is because so many teacher educators haven't been in a classroom since they were, in decades.
Oh, Michelle Johnson says, we dog teaching because kids can't read and do math. Yeah. Lucy is right. That is why we dog teaching. Yeah, I don't know, Jay. Maybe you should come up with a secret sauce somehow of how all of these teachers are going to actually hear the public, especially the marginalized public, in a way where they're not going to discount, dismiss, instantly take offense and make it about themselves. The problem that I see, actually, I keep going back to is the self-centeredness. Like teachers actually are very narcissistic about their practice. That is why they get so insulted, because any slight critique goes to the center of their core. It's like their entire being, because they are centering themselves. And I think that makes it very hard to like say anything. My kid's not reading. Well, have you tried this? Well, well, maybe your kid's dumb. Shit, I don't know. They would never say that to your face. They'd say that to their friends at the dinner party. But anyways, maybe you should have this talk with them, Jay. You should say, guys, listen, there are a lot of people that didn't get a very good education in this world, and they're damn sure trying to make sure that their kids get one. So maybe when they say these things, they're not actually just like talking about you, little Susie from the suburbs who had a good life. Maybe they're talking about their own life, which actually they know depends on them actually getting a good education and being in a system that's going to give them one.
Yeah. That was a big final word to respond to.
No, it doesn't work. You don't think that's going to work? All right.
No. I mean, I can see, I know why teachers are fragile. Like we've got this, for the most part, like mean, angry pressure coming from above. There's society is on the outside screaming at us. And then the kids and the parents are from below. And if you're trying to please everybody all at the same time, you won't do it. Like sometimes what's best for the kids has to go against your AP's orders. And sometimes you got to do something for the superintendent through the principal that isn't best for your kids, but you just have to do it, because if you don't do it, they're going to write you up and fire you. And sometimes, anyway,
So can you just say that then? Can you just say that instead of saying, shut up, you've never taught?
Chris, like the amount of people that wrote that to you is stupid. It's a stupid,
it's ignorant.
It's an ignorant argument to make. And as you said, like the fact, if that's how they teach their classrooms, like that's really scary, right?
I want my kid out of their class. Well, listen, you've been helpful as always. I'm glad that out of 10 tweets, you found 7 that were okay.
Yeah.
And 2 that were on the cusp, needing avid, and 1 that was beyond remediation.
only because I think it took away from the what could have been the power of the rest. I think it was like a magnet. It attracted people to be angry, and then it colored their lens of how they read everything else. So
yeah, well, I'm sticking by my guns of I'm glad it went viral before teachers got to it, because it was nothing but love until teachers got a hold of 1 of 10 tweets and they showed their ass. They actually showed the world what it's like to be them.
There was nothing in me that thought I was going to change your guns. I knew you were going to stick to your guns.
Good, because then I'm consistent. All right, man. Well, listen, I appreciate this. This is I am so wore down. It's the end of the year, and I'm about to go not offline, but I'm about to do less for a couple of weeks. Yeah, so
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm going to do a lot of less, but we should still do this again.
Take some self-care. Do it again in 2021, maybe.
All right. Sounds good, man. Thank you so much for your time. I know you got to actually teach tomorrow, and I don't. So there. Hey, like them apples.
Yeah. Do you have to go to a classroom tomorrow, Chris? Do you?
I don't. No, I do not have to prepare anything, and I don't have to teach math. You will be happy to know this. I've been spending the last, I want to say, 2 weeks actually in math YouTube. And
that's a fun place.
It's a fun place, except for I start discovering all the stuff that I didn't know before and wondering where was this at, and I've fallen down a rabbit hole now, stuff I never knew existed. So anyways, thank you for all you do, man. It's no diss on your particular service to our communities.
Nah, thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for watching. We appreciate